All right, welcome back. So we are turning our attention now to the economy. Well, yes, so some parts of education as well. And now we've got Osalama Okofu, who is a management consultant and an economist. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we know that, yes, we've had newly elected governors. We have some who will be, going on with their second term. We have a president-elect. But, part of what was highlighted while they were talking about security had to do with education. And with the unemployment rate in the country and the figures coming through from the World Poverty Clock not encouraging, how do we go about addressing or fixing the economy and then doing something about education? What's the link?
Well, education is very key. It's very important. If you have a well-educated populace, all things being equal, under a ceteris paribus situation, you would expect a society that thrives. People bringing a different skill sets, different areas, engineering, manufacturing, economics, even politics. They bring them to bear under a macro space for the benefit of the society. So education is very, very key. I know offline, I did mention that there are some countries that do not have natural resources under the soil, right? What they have is intellectual capacity. And they've been able to thrive. They've been able to become some of the best societies that you have. Whereas you have countries that have huge deposits of mineral resources. Look at what's going on in Venezuela today. One of the supposedly richest countries in the world, but going through so much pain because you have somebody who lacks the capacity, the intellectual capacity to drive development and growth. I want to believe that if a Maduro, for example, was very, very intelligent, well educated and exposed, he would have taken Venezuela to the next level. Coming back and answering your question directly, education is key. But unfortunately, in Nigeria, right from as far as I can recall, we've always budgeted very minimal portion of our annual budget to education, both at the state and at the federal level. And it's what you give that you get. Garbage in, garbage out. So that's one sector that we actually need to make a lot of investment in, because on the long run, 15, 20 years down the road, you begin to reap the benefit of what you've sowed, especially with respect to information technology. This is the Google generation. Yeah. When you develop the human capacity along this line, we'll do well. Unfortunately, again, too, Nigeria ranks amongst one of the lowest in terms of IT infrastructure and deployment. So these are areas we need to look at. We need to develop. We need to invest seriously on, and with the expectation and hope that the economy would improve. Processes will be better, better driven down the line.
So, Kofu, one of the things that anyone would want to ask you about this education thing that you talked about is, how focused is education as presently orchestrated in Nigeria now for economic growth?
Again, too, we don't teach things like entrepreneurship in schools. We don't. But the argument could equally be made that, but we teach business administration. We teach economics. We teach management. These are, links. They are linkage effects to entrepreneurship and economic development. We probably need to rejig some of the curricula, right?
So essentially, what we have now is not focused for human capital development per se for economic growth.
I wouldn't say that because, like I just posited, we teach economics, we teach business administration and management. We don't necessarily need to sit people in class and say, we want to make you an entrepreneur. Some of the best or biggest entrepreneurs globally, even within Nigeria, they didn't even read business administration. Some things are innate to you. Some things come naturally. Some things are opportunities that just drop on your lap, and if you're smart enough, you leverage on them. But I think beyond trying to make it an education thing, we need to make it, a society thing, creating the right environment. This normal cliche, having the right environment for businesses to thrive. If we put the right processes in place, right? Nigeria wouldn't, for example, have lost 36% in foreign direct investment in 2018, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. It wasn't because the people who wanted to come and balked are not educated. It's because the environment wasn't enabling, the normal cliche. Enabling in the sense that the polity has to be clement. Enabling in the sense that the economy should be such that they believe that when they come and invest, there are people who would patronize their goods and or services. Enabling in the sense that technology has to be right? So that the operations are virtually seamless. Enabling in the sense that the legal environment has to be right, such that if they have issues with their Nigerian partners, for example, and they take those cases to court, they are sure that there will be no outside interference. I mean, these are some of the issues we need to look at, to ensure that there's growth, there's development, and issues of unemployment are tackled. When 36% of people who want to come invest in your country say we're no more coming because of this, and this factor, that's a huge number. It means if they were 100, 36 are saying we're no longer coming. And for an emerging and frontier economy, we need foreign direct investment. We need foreigners to come into this country to invest and help us grow, help us achieve and attain the level that we want to get to.
But as presently constituted now, unemployment, youth unemployment, it's a lot, double digit. What should we be doing to tackle that?
No, I already made reference to all that. It's not, issues of employment are not things we can tackle alone as Nigerians. We are an emerging economy. We need foreigners who already have achieved so much wherever they are, right? And say, okay, let's look for new frontiers to deploy our resources and come invest, right? If the environment is right, they come and invest. Of course, they create jobs.
Have we played our creativity card such that we see education is more broad-based to accommodate the new kinds of jobs that comes with new kinds of technologies away from the status quo? Is that happening for us?
No, but I mean, if you we're not trained as a medical doctor, you can't practice as a medical doctor. If you didn't go to law school, you can't go to court and argue a case. There are some sectors that are strictly professional, right? You need to go through the basic training. You wouldn't say because you are digitech, you are good with your tabs and all, you go to court and argue a case when you're not a lawyer. So it's actually a function of all the different skill sets coming into play. But, like I've said, and like I believe it's generally agreed, this is the Google generation. IT drives businesses globally right now. The richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, of Amazon, set up that organization online, and before you know it, the physical shops, all the Tesco's, the Lidl's, and they all started shutting down, because time has changed. Something that now drives the process, right? So these are the things we need to leverage on. But for a country that is ranked as one of the third lowest in IT infrastructure deployment. I mean, it shows that we do have a long way to go.
Because I'm asking this because we have got more graduates that have been churned out time and again, every other year. But there aren't those conventional jobs for them to get inside, to join the fray or in the open market. So are we stuck to the kind of education that we are pushing forward now? Or can we broaden this using creativity as a tool to broaden that space? You talked about ICT. You talked about other kinds of jobs that could come up. Even you're having young stars these days making apps that could spore up and bring up new kinds of jobs, and the economies of scale continues. But are we taking advantage of that?
See, you have a lot of young Nigerians who, travel outside the shores of this country, and suddenly they become superstars. They become, in Anambra State, there's this school, Vivian Cieli or something like that, yeah. Young Nigerian ladies went to the US and won glory for Nigeria, right? We have the capacity. They left Nigeria for that competition and they won. They didn't spend 2 years in the US before they went for the competition. So the American society did not add anything to them. They were raw and cut from here. We have it, we have them. I mean, the way things are right now, you could be somewhere in Makurdi and still operate globally, so, do things outside the shores. You're not limited by boundaries anymore. So long as you have access to the internet, you can do a whole lot. But see, that is why I said we need to do a whole lot more along the line of IT infrastructure deployment. So we have the right skill set. Again, too, the environment has to enable you to bring those things to fore. If the environment is not there, when I said enabling environment, it's not just for foreigners alone, even for the locals. Issues of security. No environment thrives, no society thrives in an atmosphere of insecurity. And then again, too, a situation where this issue of federal character is something we need to look at constitutionally. In a way that we need to look at, let's put the right people, the best qualified people to doing the job, wherever they come from. Right? But a situation where you now feel, okay, a certain part of the country, you brought X amount of people. Let's give another part of the country who probably cannot even boast of, the people that are required to do that job. And then you bring them, and then they don't fit. So these are issues we need to look at. This issue of this federal character thing, it's not helping us. We are Nigerians. Let us begin to think Nigeria.
Some of the immediate challenges too that people face here is access to credit.
Yeah.
What do we do to ensure that? I know that the agri sector have been talking about how they could get interest rates at single digits.
Yeah.
But at the moment, businesses is still double digits. Why do you think is that difficult to get it across a single digit?
Well, if you're talking about the single, you made allusion to the agricultural sector. This government, just like the previous government, they did so well in agriculture. So there's been a follow-through from the previous government in that sector. The Anchor Borrower scheme that is CBN is pursuing right now, I mean, it's quite encouraging. Access to facilities, I mean, it's single digits, and I think to a very large extent it's working. But let's look at the macro. Beyond that, the rate is double digits. The MPR was just brought down to 13.5 from 14% after a very long period. So what it essentially means is that is expected to encourage investment drive, because cost of borrowing from the deposit money banks, of course, too, is expected to drop. So what the MPC did, is quite commendable. But then the question, therefore, is that far-reaching? Is that enough? I don't think so, because when you talk about macroeconomics, you're talking about the monetary and then the fiscal leg. the monetary staff, they made a move, it's like a chessboard. What are the fiscalists doing? A situation where the central bank is now adopting an expansionary policy, right? But the fiscalists are not doing the same. The tax regime is quite draconian. It's quite tough, and that's a disincentive.
What should they be doing about that particular area?
What I think the government needs to do, again, before I answer your question directly, it's pertinent to know that in 2018, taxation contributed the second highest to our GDP, which is good, but I don't think it's sustainable. What that could do over time is that to discourage investments. So we need to be careful, because if 3-4 years down the line you're not able to sustain that, it means you've lost something very, very key. So I guess that does answer your question. We need to tamper it down. We need to be careful. We need to again look at our tax operations and ensure that just anybody who can oppress you will not come and tax your business. You have the Iya Oloja, you have the Baba Alaye, you have the local government, you have the state government, and then you have the federal government, all coming to tax one business. We need to check that. We need to be sure and ensure that the issues of multiple taxation is eliminated.
Also brings me to that question. This is one aspect that stifles businesses, obviously.
Absolutely.
Look at the World Poverty Clock, 91.6 million, approximately 46.5% of Nigeria's population is in extreme poverty.
Wow.
How in the universe can we get out? I mean, you talked the other time about business administration in schools as a flavor of teaching entrepreneurship. With this, how can we teach entrepreneurship to the point that people will be learned enough to run a small business? Because you know as an economist that without the SMEs, we can't have a buoyant economy.
The problem is not because they are not taught entrepreneurship in schools. The problem is with the operating environment. If the environment is harsh, if the environment is not enabling, and I already talked about those factors that make up the mix, Rasmussen factors that make up the mix, essentially the PESO analysis, it won't work.
You have the ease of doing business.
What is ease of doing business?
The government has said it. They say they've succeeded so well.
Yeah, but see, the same government tells you that inflation rate has dipped, right? But when you go to the market, your wallet doesn't tell you that. Food inflation is high.
Are they living in denial when they give us these figures?
I don't want to discuss politics here, okay? But you and I know, and as much as I've said, as much as I've adduced, the environment is not enabling. And those are the things that, will lead to why businesses are shutting down.
Okay, so we'll look at what more should we be doing, because businesses need to thrive. That's when we'll come back in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. You were talking about what we should actually be doing other than, the ease of doing business program.
Yeah, I mean, the ease of business, I was going to talk about the ease of doing business. It goes beyond just registering a company. Yeah, you reduce the turnaround time from maybe 2 months to 24 hours. Yeah, but beyond that, what happens, right? The environment has to be enabling. I keep using that over one cliche. If the policies of government are stifling, businesses will not thrive. Rates, yeah, okay, for the locals, but then again, we need to understand that rates are not the major factors, and the major factor that drives investment. When foreigners are coming, they are not coming straight out to borrow from you. If ever they would, they come with their money. Monies they borrow from their banks at very, very low interest rates. What they need is to ensure that there's security. What they need is to ensure that there's the rule of law. What they want to see is to ensure that when they set up shop, there'll be patronage. They want to see that the legal system works for everybody, right? So these are things we need to look at. So when you talk about ease of doing business, you need to look at operations within the system. The government needs to stop playing lip service to some of these things I talked about.
And this is not just national level, the states inclusive, because that's where people live.
Even down to the local levels, you know, where you have a local government chairman who sees himself as a god and starts, you know, being oppressive, where you have local government officials who are overly aggressive to the mom and pop shops, the corner shops. Those are the SMEs we're talking about. Those are the little businesses. When you drive them out of business, jobs are lost. If in 1 month, right, you 10 shops close, that's 10 shop attendants that have lost their jobs. So when you talk of poverty, the poverty level increasing, when people are out of jobs, they don't earn income, disposable income is zero, purchasing power atrophies, they fall out of the safety net. So we need to ensure that our policies, even down to the local government levels, are friendly, especially with respect to taxation. See, the average Nigerian can operate and thrive even in the very harshest of conditions. You know, when they come out with the little monies they've saved, right, or even borrow from their families and friends, set up a little business, and government policy stifles their operation. You know, the reason why businesses atrophy within 1 year of setting up is not because there's no patronage. It's not because the person who set up the vision suddenly have lost the drive, you know, and the momentum. It's just because certain things that are exogenous to him or her, you know, are choking. You know, so these are the things we need to look at.
What can we do to improve borrowing, especially when you think of the figures that came out just during the week of about 7 banks that controlled about 16.6 trillion. I think I'm getting the figure right. But those ones,
I think you're shooting the time too.
those will seem to be an economy in an economy when SMEs cannot even borrow. They cannot even have access to the SME funds.
No, I'll just quickly answer that again too. Let's give kudos to the central bank. The drop in the base rate, which is the MPR, is good. It's commendable. It essentially means that investment opportunities or interest would spike up. Banks, of course, the deposit money banks would be better positioned to creating facilities or risk assets, you know, which would help to drive the economy. And then on the issue of accessibility to, I mean, we have so many SME programs. How many of these SMEs know about SMED and how they can, you know, leverage?
So those are
it's about awareness again too.
Issues for subsequent consideration. Usalama Kofu is a management consultant and an economist. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so that's the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Usal.
I'm Gemba Umar.
I'm Ayo Makinde.
Thank you. I'm Maokbe Ogun Yusuf. Have a great day.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.